Hello, this is Joanna from the Centre for Innovation in Education with a few simple tips to help you improve the accessibility of your documents and presentations. In this short video, we will identify some common issues for disabled and diverse learners and explore some quick ways to become more accessible. Warning, I'll be demonstrating some inaccessible practice. I'll warn you about this as we go along. So why be accessible? Most importantly, we want to enable all students to succeed and to anticipate and remove barriers to their success. The social model of disability flips the old medical paradigm. Instead of disability being located in the individual and their medical profile, it is located in the environment. For example, a building without lift access can disable a wheelchair user. However, this is not just about creating accessible buildings. A poorly designed document can disable someone with visual impairments, for example. Our legal and ethical duty is to be anticipatory, not to wait until someone with a disability requests an adjustment, but to do our best to minimise their need to do so in the first place. In addition, new legislation requires us to ensure all content posted on the web is accessible. Okay, let's get started. Take a look at this. It's a representation of how people with neurodifferences like dyslexia might experience black serif font text on a white background. This contrast creates glare and produces visual stress, making the text very difficult to process. It is very easily fixed by changing slide background and the font. Let's see how to change the background first. Okay, it's very easy to change your background from white. First of all, right-click on the slide and select Format Background. You'll then get this nice kind of paint pot here. What you want is the solid fill. Click on the colour. I'm going to go for this nice gold. But it's a little dark for me, so I'm going to up the transparency a bit, so it's like that. The other thing to remember is to apply it to all of the slides in your presentation. Just click this button. As we've seen, black text on a white background can cause visual stress. I like to use a dark blue text on a light but not white background, as recommended by the British Dyslexia Association. Colour contrast has to remain good for visually impaired readers. The WebAIM site will allow you to check the accessibility of the combination you use. Serif fonts cause problems, so avoid Times New Roman with its use of small lines added to the letters. There are many sans serif fonts. I often use Calibri, and one of the university's favoured fonts is Montserrat. Font size and position also make a difference. In a PowerPoint, avoid text under 24 points, and where possible, keep text justified to the left. Sometimes we need to write in capitals or in italics, or to underline words. However, these styles can make the text less easily accessed by some students, so avoid where possible. This slide illustrates the danger of overwhelming students with too much text. Most of us are prone to overloading our slides, so look out for this problem. You can either work on making the content more concise or break it down across several slides. On the whole, using bullet points is likely to be more accessible than including a whole paragraph, so breaking text down this way can improve accessibility. People with dyslexia may find it easier to read when there's a good amount of space between lines, so allow some room for white, or should we say off-white, space. Neuro-diverse and other disabled learners may need longer to process knowledge or find it difficult to concentrate for long periods. For this reason, Denise Priest in the Management School recommends a 7-3 structure in lectures. This means, as a presenter, you should aim to talk no longer than 7 minutes at a time, before giving students an activity that allows them to consolidate what you've been saying, such as a pair and share or a polling exercise. This active learning approach also aligns with Curriculum 2021 and the education strategy. Students with autism, for example, can easily be overwhelmed by a long series of instructions coming at them all at once. This is true for most of us. As a result, look at how you guide students through exercises and try to break that down into a manageable series of logical steps. Colour can be a great resource in designing teaching, and one that benefits some learners with dyslexia. But be sure there are other cues for students to pick up on. Have a look at these pictures. The image on the right represents what a colourblind student may experience. Could you tell the difference between the reds and the greens in the right-hand picture? Represent meaning in multiple ways if you can. This is one of the principles of universal design for learning. I'll include a link at the end for you to find out more about UDL. In addition, the Web Accessibility Guidelines ask us to ensure that colour is never used as the only way to convey information. To include people with colour blindness, you might avoid orange, red and green and use other ways to signal meaning. You can also check that your meaning will come across by printing in black and white, or by seeing whether the colours you use have sufficient contrast by using the WebAIM site, as mentioned earlier. Images are another great way to convey meaning to many students. There are a few things to think about regarding accessibility, however. Again, it's good to use multiple means of representation, universal design for learning, so that viewers can choose to access your content via text and/or image, rather than being restricted just to the image. Text over images can be difficult for many learners. While this may be improved by using a text box with a solid background, this fix can cause issues for students using screen readers. Students with visual impairments who use screen readers will not be able to make sense of images unless you create what's called alt text. Again, this is easily done. Just right-click your image and Format Picture, select the alt text option and name and describe what's there. Having a text equivalent for all images is part of the essential requirements of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So far, we've thought about students from various equality groups such as dyslexia. These next few slides concentrate on students with another unseen disability, in this case related to balance, vertigo, migraine and epilepsy. Motion can cause difficulties for these students. Some presentation apps use motion extensively. For example, Prezi slides swoop in and out to different slides, which can make many people feel seasick. PowerPoint also offers some elaborate transitions that can cause problems. Look away now if you have difficulty with motion on screen. That kind of transition might add novelty, surprise, but on the whole is best avoided. It's also good to be cautious with animations. Fancy kinetic templates, such as one in which snowflakes were constantly drifting down behind the text, can negatively affect some students. Motion that swoops and swirls is also best avoided, especially when the movement is very fast. I used a couple of simple animations earlier and slowed them down using the animation pane in PowerPoint to minimize the risk. To warn you, there is more bad practice in the next slide. Particularly problematic animations include those that flash and incorporate repetitive motions, or in slides where multiple objects are moving around at different speeds. Flashy looping GIFs like this one can trigger migraines. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines require us to avoid content that flashes or flickers and to ensure that content that moves can be stopped. Anyone who has looked away to avoid the flashing GIF can look back now. I often see presenters scrolling through a web document such as a vital page. This can be a really useful way to direct students' attention to something on the VLE. However, it's best to warn students if you're about to scroll, so those affected can look away. You will also need to say when you've arrived at the relevant information, so that these students can look back at the screen. People often use bold to indicate headings in Word documents. However, this can make it difficult for a visually impaired student using a screen reader. It also limits the way in which readers can navigate the document, a function that helps all users. Use heading styles as indicated in this slide. Students benefit from having materials available beforehand. They can access the materials in their own time, and this provides a framework for their own understanding of the class you deliver. Students with disabilities like dyslexia often find that the slides move too fast for them, so posting them in advance of class helps. My colleagues Anna and Tunde surveyed a group of international students here. One key finding was that students wanted resources stored on a central area, vital, to avoid confusion and frustration. All students tend to appreciate well-managed, easily accessible learning materials on the VLE. Multimedia resources can be very engaging, but there's a couple of things to remember. Transcripts and/or subtitles will help students with hearing impairments. Audio description can be another way to make your videos more accessible to visually impaired students. Wherever possible, create resources that students can manipulate themselves, where they can change the font size or colour, for example. PDFs may be less easily adapted by readers than Office documents. Did you know that Microsoft Office allows you to check your documents for accessibility? Pause the video now to get the instructions for accessing this checker in PowerPoint. Look out for it too in other applications, including Word. To conclude, I want to share a few useful resources. Would you like to find out more about inclusive design? CAST lays out principles of universal design for learning. The government offers advice on web content accessibility, which can be applied also to materials you use on the VLE. New legislation requires us to make our web content accessible, and you can find out more about that here. The British Dyslexia Association helps us to design materials that will be accessible for people with dyslexia. Their style guide is well worth checking out. Finally, the University of Hull has combined material from the Home Office's series of posters about designing for diversity. They list a number of key do's and don'ts, which can remind us of good practice. That's it for this short video. I hope it has given you some practical ideas about how to make your presentations and documents more accessible to all. Thanks for watching.